What's going on, man? Welcome back to the basement. I'm Ron. A lot happened over the weekend in fantasy football land, and today we are here to break it all down with my top 10 lessons learned, where we go over my rookie receiver report, the rookie running back carousel, usage, data, trends, everything you need to know to save you time from scrolling box scores and articles and Twitter threads and everything under the sun. This is just to condense it all into one video to recap week 4 as we head into week 5 and make sure you are all up to date with everything you need to know to dominate your fantasy football league. As always, if you enjoy, leave a like, subscribe if you're new. And our first takeaway from week 4 as we head to week 5 is, as always, the world famous rookie receiver report sponsored by Underdog. As always, when you use promo code RON and you play $5, they will give you $50 in bonus funds to use in the Pick'em lobbies, the Battle Royale lobbies, the draft lobbies. We're going to have NBA coming up here soon, NHL coming up here soon. It is all happening over on Underdog. You can find the link to that in the description and the comment section down below. Now, how this works is we have every rookie wide receiver and tight end that has run 20 or more routes. We have their week 2 through 4 route share, so just over the last 3 weeks, what is their trend in terms of getting on the field during pass plays? We want 80% or more of the routes is probably the number we're looking for. 90% plus is elite. Targets per route run. How much volume are you getting on a per route basis? Anything over 20% is good. Yards per route run. Are you efficient on those targets? Anything over 2 yards per route run is good. First downs per route run. Are you not only making big plays and getting volume, but are you moving the chains and helping your offense? Anything over 10% is good. And then PFF grade. Do you look good on film as according to the PFF film experts out there? That is a number we're looking for. Probably like 70 plus is good. 80 plus is that elite number that we are in search of here. Now, our first player we'll talk about, and I got a comment on the last video. You guys let me know. Sometimes I'll bounce around and talk about the big names first, right? Where you see down here, like Travis Hunter's all the way down here. If I go name by name by name, we're not going to talk about Travis Hunter for a while. In the past, I've talked about like the marquee guys up top and then bounced around, but I do understand that that's kind of hard to follow. So we're actually just going to go straight down the list here, and you guys let me know how you feel about this. Let's get into the rookie receiver report here. We have Isaac Tesla. He didn't really do anything in this game. He goes from 35% plus of the routes down to 22%. He's purely a speculative ad, or like a speculative ad / like deep stash is really what he is at this point. His P5 grade is nice, but it's just because he has a couple of highlight reel plays. Oronde Gadsden, in just his second game as a pro, as a day 3 tight end. I keep saying that because day 3 tight ends have zero expectations. Sometimes these guys are just never even getting on the field. And Oronde Gadsden gets up to 50% of the routes in week 4 here, which led the entire tight end room. That was more routes run than Tyler Conklin, than Will Dissly. He was an absolute, I was going to say stud. He didn't really produce, but he was it just goes to show how much this coaching staff likes him and believes in him, is what I would say about him at the 50% mark. He didn't really do anything crazy. And then really his bigger issue here is it's funny, especially with these tight ends. There's some hurdles to clear, especially as a day 3 tight end. First hurdle is getting on the field. He's starting to clear that hurdle. I think in like 3 to 4 to 5 weeks, we could see him hit 70% plus of the routes, which for a tight end, that's going to play. The issue now is going to be, can these per route metrics stick? There's no way they stick at face value of 24% targets per out run and 10% first downs per out run. But can he operate in like the 19, 18% targets per out run area at a 70% route share next to Ladd McConkey, Quentin Johnston, and Keenan Allen? That's going to be tough to keep up, but we shall see. I also have Mitchell Evans, who was a fun tight end prospect we liked over the summer. Really solid. I believe he is out of Notre Dame. Fun tight end prospect, somebody I was stashing in Dynasty. He gets added playing time with JT Sanders out, but Tommy Tremble is their preferred go-to tight end. So Mitchell Evans just purely a Dynasty stash, but these per route numbers are really strong for another day 3 tight end, right? 17% targets per out run, 1.41 yards per out run, 6.9% first downs per out run. Attached to Bryce Young as a depth rookie tight end is not bad at all. Speaking of Panthers, we have Tetairoa McMillan. It's tough. His target share looks amazing. His expected points per game in terms of volume looks amazing. He's just attached to Bryce Young in a rough offense, which is really tough to swallow because his targets per out run is good. He is flirting with 75 PFF grade, 10% first downs per out run on a roster or on an offense that's not moving the chains that often. is really impressive. 1.85 yards per route run is very fine, but it's not translating to PPR points, and that really stings. But long term, I feel amazing about Tetairoa McMillan as just a locked and loaded stud receiver long term. Then we have Alec Manor. Quiet stat line in this game. He didn't really do anything, but 90% of the routes is huge. This is what we love to see. This is what the rookie receiver report is all about. 68% of the routes, 76%, 90%. He is slowly working up the depth chart. He has now dethroned Calvin Ridley as the wide receiver 1. Now, here's the issue. He is the wide receiver 1 in an offense attached to Cam Ward. Is that valuable? Not really. But, I mean, 19.7% targets per run is great. 70-plus PFF grade is great. Like, all through the lens of him being a day 3 wide receiver attached to Cam Ward, everything he's done so far is about as good as you could ask for. Now, what I will say is the wide receiver 1 attached to Cam Ward isn't that sexy, but people, not me. I have tons of misses myself, no doubt. But I was not into Calvin Ridley this year. But there were people out there drafting Calvin Ridley in the top 6 rounds of fantasy drafts. So if Alec Manor is now in the Calvin Ridley role, probably like a top 10 round value, which I think off of waivers, you take that all day long. Of course, we've been saying he is the number 1 wide receiver waiver wire ad. We said that in like week 1 for Manor in terms of like realistic options that were going to be out there. Tyler Warren, more of the same. He finally scores a touchdown on like a design. They gave him like 2 designed rushes in the red zone, which is really exciting. I think one of them was a direct snap wildcat. And then correct me if I'm wrong, I think the other one was like a fullback dive where he was playing fullback and like ran some dude over. He is just amazing. And again, I can't stress this enough because he's made it. This is almost like nonchalant from him. And you look at his per route stuff and it's like, okay, it's good, but it doesn't jump off the screen. I can't stress enough that like tight ends should be graded on a curve. Like this is a group of wide receivers and some tight ends. Remember that like if you were to compare the top 3 tight ends in yards per route run, first downs per route run, PFF grade versus the top 3 wide receivers in any given year, the receivers are going to kill him in the receiving stats. It just makes sense. So for Tyler Warren to be the leader in the clubhouse among all fantasy rookie wide receivers, like almost leading all of them in not only targets per out run, but also yards per out run and first downs per out run. That is truly, truly amazing stuff. He is a top 3 dynasty tight end. He is a top 3 to 4. He's a top 5 rest of season tight end. It just depends how you feel about Tucker Kraft and George Kittle on IR at this point. But he's the prince who was promised. He is so, so good. Tyler Warren. Then we get Emeka Egbuka, which is so nice. And this is why I wasn't folding under pressure early in the season. We saw he had almost like reminiscent of Jordan Addison and Jahan Dotson's rookie years, where they were very, what was I going to say? Kind of inflated by touchdown totals versus per route metrics, which, of course, you want the yards per out run and stuff, but you also want the player to produce on the field. Now, of course, you're going to get guys like Jahan Dotson, but I'm very firm in my belief that Emeka Egbuka is a far superior prospect to someone like Jahan Dotson. So I wasn't going to stare like 3 touchdowns through 2 games in the face and be like, well, his yards per out run isn't 2+ yards per out run in like my weird nerd voice. It's fine. And now he, in a game where all offseason, all I hear is, well, what happens when Chris Godwin comes back? What happens when Chris Godwin comes back? Well, Chris Godwin came back and had 10 targets. And in this game with Godwin with 10 targets, Egbuka had 4 catches, 101 yards, and a touchdown. He's a top 12 wide receiver in PPR points. Just a massive W across the board. And on top of that, like I think maybe the most positive thing here is that this was a short-term injury. He dipped down to 66% of the routes here because of an injury. He comes back up to 90% plus. He's fine, good to go. And his per route metrics keep on improving. Now, I will say the PFF grades this year feel off. Maybe through a full 17-game sample, they'll fix themselves. But like in years past, this Tyler Warren number should be in the high 70s. Egbuka should be in the mid to high 70s. McMillan's feels about right at 74.9, but I don't know what's going on with the PFF grades this year. Then we have Luther Burden, sadly, just still in a gadget role. He's still hovering around. Like, I wouldn't call this a downgrade from 31% to 27%. It's like the same usage. It just sucks. I mean, he's still efficient because of the big play and, like, him being manufactured these touches, but he had, like, 2 targets for -4 yards this week, and that's just what's going to happen in this role. We're hoping that he can keep on growing this role, but it's looking tough. They do get, I believe they get a week 5 bye here. Maybe he can get some post-bye rookie bump action for Luther Burden. Then we can talk about Jaden Higgins. He scores a touchdown here, but this Houston Texans staff is just so annoying with the rookie wide receiver usage. Like they're rolling out Xavier Hutchinson and like Justin Watson to run a considerable amount of routes. and it's making both of their rookies, Jaden Higgins and Jalen Noel, hover in this like 30 to 40% route share area where Jaden Higgins made a big play this week. He's been somewhat efficient on his looks, but it's tough to get into a rhythm if you're only going to be out on the field for a third of pass plays. He does score a touchdown here. Jaden Higgins, to me, is the more promising between the two. He's somebody I'm still definitely stashing in seasonal leagues. You can drop Jalen Noel, but it is just annoying. Like his route share is just stuck at 35 to 40%. There is no climbing, and they won this game in easy fashion. So I don't see that changing much soon. We'll talk about another pair of teammates with Torrey Horton and Elijah Arroyo here. Torrey Horton has been fun, but his route share came back down almost at. Here's the thing with the Seahawks: is they run so much heavy personnel, is they have to like consciously decide between Torrey Horton and Elijah Arroyo. So you'll see these guys kind of like bounce off of each other, where they were both at 51% here. Then Torrey Horton spikes to 76%. Arroyo goes down to 38%. Arroyo up to 61%. Horton down to 39%. So they almost can't exist together, at least in this iteration of this offense, where it's very heavy personnel. And if they want a third receiver on the field, it's coming at Arroyo's expense because they do love AJ Barner that much. And that's probably the right call. Like Arroyo is not a complete tight end at this point in the game. Like he is really more of this wide receiver hybrid. He had a great night on Thursday night, made a couple of big plays, contested catches. Horton, of course, was quieter. His power matches aren't great. I'll be honest, if you have Horton in a redraft league that's shallow, you can drop him. I would be stunned if Horton came back and was like a Rashee Rice second half of the season type of guy. He seems in Dynasty, I'm very happy with him. Like he's produced, he's getting on the field as a day 3 wide receiver. These are all wins, but being productive in your seasonal redraft fantasy football league, it seems unlikely. Again, it's not an indictment on his talent. It's just in this offense, low pass volume. JSN is the owner of all of the good volume, and then Horton is just kind of in this weird rubber band effect with Arroyo, where I don't know that he's ever startable. You probably need a Cooper Kupp injury, and then even then you're picking up the scraps after JSN. We'll also talk about Gunnar Helm and Shamir DK, some more teammates on the Titans. I still cannot wrap my head, and it's why Brian Callahan's going to get fired. I know that they're declining. I don't know. I guess you spend a 4th round pick on Shamir DK and you feel pressured to try and use him. But at this point, he is god-awful, man. We're talking 0.02 yards per out run. He's yet to convert a first down. They're targeting him over 20% of his routes, and he's giving you nothing. Like, genuinely nothing. I think he has, like, 10-plus targets this year for, like, -1 yards. It is a really, really ugly scene. Not that anyone was holding out hope for Shamir DK in Dynasty or Fantasy, but he is brutal. Gunnar Helm, another one of these guys like Mitchell Evans that I think is not going to be startable this year. He stays in this like 35% area, but his per out metrics for a tight end are amazing, especially a day 3 tight end. So Gunnar Helm is somebody to keep your eye on long term. Then we have Harold Fannin. Couple of things to note with Fannin. Massive W. We get to 71% of the routes. That is a season high. He also gets more routes in this game than David Njoku, I believe. I will double check that because that's the report I heard on Twitter, is that this was the first game that Fannin ran more routes than Njoku, which to me is a big milestone. Now, it didn't come up in the box score for Harold Fannin, right? He only gives you 3.5 PPR points. No, they match each other, essentially. Njoku had 71% of the routes in this game. Harold Fannin, 71% of the routes in this game. So we're kind of seeing things start to pass by for Fannin. And then you'll see, like, he didn't put up any points, but he did have 6 targets in this game. So he was a focal point. He just couldn't really connect with Flacco. Only came down with 2 for 24 in this game. Then we can talk about Matthew Golden. This one's tough. He probably gets downgraded to just a bench stash. We were all very excited. He gets the Cowboys. Fire him up. He made, like, one big play. It's clear that they want to get him involved, but then we also just saw Wicks set a season high in route share. So LaFleur is still on his rotation stuff. I mean, Golden gave you 11.3 PPR points. That's back-to-back weeks of 10+. He goes into the bye, so there's certainly a chance he comes out of the bye week versus Cincinnati and has a monster game. That's very much in the range of outcomes, but just like for right now, if he's going to hover in 70% of the routes territory, and then these are his per-route metrics, it's tough. It's really tough to trust him week in and week out as a starter on your team, but if you started him, you will take 11.3 PPR points last night. Then we have Isaiah Bond. We're going to kind of skip around the rest of these here. I will point out Kyle Williams slowly creeping up. Not really anything to come of it, but if we can get these to creep up and we can get any of these to look decent, things start to get interesting for Kyle Williams. Then we'll talk about Isaiah Bond here. I believe Cedric Tillman gets hurt in this game versus the Lions. Isaiah Bond gets 6 targets in this one, 3 catches, 58 yards. Nothing crazy, but he's definitely somebody to keep your eye on and will definitely be on the ad list for the waiver wire just because of the unknown. His parametrics at this point are not good, but it's a small sample, and maybe this turns things around, but they continue to ramp him up in usage, and we will see how that looks moving forward. And then the last player we'll talk about, everything else is just kind of miscellaneous here. We'll talk about Travis Hunter. This is tough, man. He goes from 60%, 60%, 70%, which is a W. And like also a W for him is he has a 20% targets per out run. He had 3 catches for 42 yards in this game, and it was his best single game yards per out run this season. But it was only 1.83. We want 2+ yards per out run. And in like a big game, you should have more like 2.5, 3+ yards per out run. So it's tough. Apparently he's like in the doghouse on the defensive side of the ball. I really don't know what to do with Travis Hunter. It's certainly an L to this point. I'm still holding him everywhere. I'm not dropping him anywhere. I'm hoping long-term that these routes keep climbing and he finds something in the NFL just in terms of efficiency and looking good on the field, but it's ugly right now. He seems like almost overwhelmed on both sides of the ball. He's taking on a really tough task. Again, he got benched. I don't think he played a single snap on defense in the second half, but the disheartening part is like he was brought in to play both ways, and like the concern was he was going to play too many snaps. It was going to be too many snaps. If he plays like 80% of the snaps on offense, 80% on defense, if in a given game somebody is playing 60 snaps on average across the board, if he's now playing 90 snaps in every game, that's an issue. But instead of playing 90, he's not even playing the full 60. Like he's playing like 35 of 60 snaps total between offense and defense. I'm throwing numbers like out of a hat here, but I'm just giving an example. Like if 60 is the full game snap share, he's not even getting that combined on offense and defense right now. So I don't know. The Jaguars are winning games, so I don't think that they feel inclined to do anything crazy and fix things. I'm still high on Hunter and what he can be long term. You know, if we look back at like week 11 and he's a monster, it wouldn't shock me. But for right now, it is tough. I think if you have Hunter, which a lot of you guys do if you watch this channel, what you just have to tell yourself is it looked so dead in the water for Ashton Genty and Amarian Hampton, and rookies start slow until they don't, and then all of a sudden they are monsters like Ashton Genty. Hampton we just saw. I'm trying to think of the other ones. I mean, Scatabo looked good. Judkins looked good. I think that time is coming for Hunter eventually. It's just a matter of being patient and not forcing him into your lineup and hurting your team in the process. Now, that is our rookie receiver report. Our second takeaway here, and it kind of ties into that idea, is that we now have 4 weeks of data, and I kind of just want to talk through my thoughts. And why 4 weeks of data matters is Adam Harstad, to me, one of the kind of like OG founding fathers of fantasy football from the football guys. He's been doing this stuff forever. You can see this is a tweet where he has had articles and research done back to 2013, 2014. And he's done this study of looking at your scoring versus preseason ADP and seeing which one correlates to rest of season scoring. So at what point does the ADP from August not matter more than the scoring that is right in front of us? And week 4 is kind of the turning point where everything past week 4 is now more predictive than what we had in the summer. We now have a 4-game sample size, and that is significant. Once we get to 5, like 4 weeks 1 through 4, we are now equal to ADP in the summer. So what has happened weeks 1 through 4 is as important as what happened in terms of ADP expectations in the summer. And as soon as next week we get to week 5, our weeks 1 through 5 data size is now more important than anything we talked about in the summer. We are getting right there. So I kind of just wanted to talk through some of my thoughts in terms of just like how I kind of feel at this point moving forward. Everything that happens is now for real. There is now no more like hoping that like this changes and that changes, and sure, things change and late season emergers will happen, but largely what has happened so far will be the skeleton bones of what this fantasy season is. And I know that's a weird way to talk about a fantasy season, but it just is what it is. Like when you think back to 2019 with McCaffrey, and you can think back to the Cooper Kupp Triple Crown year, and last year was the Jamar Chase Triple Crown year, along with all of the older running backs of like Saquon, Derrick Henry, Kamara, Mixon balling out early. These are storylines you remember in that given year every year. So this is kind of what we are trending towards at this point. is, I think a very simple way to do this is just to look at the flex scorers by PPR points through the first 4 weeks. And one of my takeaways from looking at the first 4 weeks of data is that if we were drafting today in a full PPR league, Puka Nacua is my wide receiver 1 overall, and he's my 101 overall. He has been that crazy. He is clearing out Christian McCaffrey, who's been amazing so far, by a full 12 PPR points, 13 PPR points. He has been absolutely ridiculous. He joins Cooper Kupp and Michael Thomas with 42 plus receptions through the first 4 games of a season. That's, of course, Michael Thomas's wide receiver 1 overall season and Cooper Kupp's, I believe, Triple Crown season as well. And you can just kind of see it. This is what I'll say is I think that we're starting to see a bit of a separation where Bijan and above, those are the guys right now. Like if you have Bijan and above, so we're talking Bijan, JT, James Cook, Amon-Ra, Christian McCaffrey, Puka Nacua. One of those 6 guys are on your team. You should feel very, very good about how things are going moving forward. If you somehow have 2 of those guys, you should feel amazing. I am very curious if any of you guys have a Puka, Amon-Ra, St. Brown, 0 RB team that maybe took advantage of some of those later, like Cam Scatabo, Jordan Mason types in fantasy. I think that your team would actually be pretty sweet, especially if you paired that with an elite quarterback. Now, I think as well, anybody after that is still pretty solid. Like Odunze is going to be a guy this year. Quentin Johnson's going to be a guy this year. I will say, we talked about it last week, and I was kind of hesitant to make James Cook a RB1 legendary running back upside candidate. I'll say everybody from Bijan and above, right? Because to me, that's kind of the divide. Is Bijan and above, those are clear difference makers. Everybody below 80 PPR points, those guys are good, but not true, holy shit, this guy has been a league winner or a matchup swing type of guy week in and week out. So I think you're most likely RB1 overall candidates. We talk about the idea of legendary running back upside, something that Pat Crane has coined in the past. Of course, it's very easy to just sort by PPR points. Be like, okay, these guys are your front runners, but they are. McCaffrey, James Cook, Jonathan Taylor, Bijan are your front runners for RB1 overall. I will say, James Cook has been tough to take seriously as a legendary running back candidate just because of his snap share and his usage, but this year, we've actually seen we need to be taking James Cook's RB1 campaign seriously. This is from Ryan Heath here. His backfield carry shares by week, 81%, 66%, 86%. This past week, 92%, a career high excluding week 14 of 2024, a game in which the Bills' RBs totaled just 6 carries. Cook hit 80% just 3 times all of last season. He has tied that already through 4 weeks in 2025. So he's getting more usage than ever, and that's absolutely massive for James Cook, who's in potentially the best offense in the league, is super efficient, and now if he's getting the volume, it's wheels all the way up. And I will say as well, you guys know, my RB1 overall, I still wouldn't count out Jahmyr Gibbs just yet, who Jahmyr Gibbs falls just behind Bijan in PPR points so far. Ryan Heath has a good thread every Monday morning where he breaks down all of his takeaways from the week of fantasy football. And I thought this one stuck out to me where he looked at the weighted opportunities for the Lions backfield by week. Gibbs has 65% of the backfield weighted opportunities this season. And through week 14 last year, it was a 50-50 split. This year, we're actually starting to see a shift to Gibbs, which that was the biggest holdup with Gibbs as the RB1 overall or as a top 5 pick was how much does Montgomery eat into his workload? It has not been the same split it was last year. And to me, that's a huge positive moving forward once he sort of gets into his groove and in some better game scripts, not against the Browns or the Packers in week 1. He has had a very difficult schedule thus far. So Gibbs would be my sleeper that's outside of those top 4. He is the RB5, but you get what I'm saying. I would take him seriously as a legendary running back candidate. Now, our third takeaway here is the panic meter. And to me, this is fitting because, as you can see on this list, it is Puka Nacua, it is Amon-Ra St. Brown, it is Rome Odunze, something I never thought I'd say. Through 4 weeks, it is Quentin Johnson. So the panic meter, what this section of the 10 takeaways video is every week, before I outline this video, I hit up my Discord on the premium side of the Patreon, and I say, hey, who are some guys you're panicking on or want me to talk about? And I kind of just bunch them all up into here are the guys that are getting, people are very freaked out on. First of all is Ladd McConkey. We're going to order them by most panicked to least panicked. My most panicked is Ladd McConkey. Just kind of going into the idea of what we just said of we have 4 weeks of data. This is now more important than what we've seen in the past, or it's as important as what we've seen in the past. It's now like a 50-50 split of what Ladd McConkey has done last year and where we were drafting him in August, and then a 50-50 split of what has happened through 3 weeks. So now we have to kind of reach a middle ground. There's no more being stubborn and like I have been in calling Ladd McConkey a buy low or my wide receiver 12 or 13 rest of season as recently as last week. He's now what he is. On the panic meter here, I would be at an 8 out of 10 with Ladd McConkey. I'll just take my medicine here. There's no positive spin. I think all three of these guys, just considering that Justin Herbert's playing at an amazing, like, damn near MVP level. I know that they lose to the Giants. The offensive line injuries and really just MetLife in general. The MetLife thing's going to set me off for 20 minutes, but they lose Joe Alt in this game, which is just brutal. So now they're down Rashawn Slater. Now they're down Joe Alt, which is going to just hurt this offense in general. But this passing offense has so much volume. They have the highest pass rate over expectation in the NFL. And what that's going to cause is an environment where three of these receivers are going to be startable every single week. And I think I will have Quentin Johnson and Ladd McConkey in the wide receiver like 20s moving forward. And Keenan Allen will be right on the fringes of late 20s, early 30s moving forward. Ladd McConkey is going to probably be a busted second-round pick. I think he probably ends up in the wide receiver 20s of points per game. I think that he's going to have better days to come. Like, it's not like the sky's not falling. It's just about readjusting expectations and being like, okay, Ladd McConkey is kind of just in like the Jacoby Myers area moving forward of just like the wide receiver 2 wasteland. It's kind of what I would call it, of just like anywhere from Jacoby Myers to Deebo Samuel to all the way to, Marvin Harrison Jr. to then you can get to like Jawan Jennings and Jordan Addison, and these guys are like within like a point per game of each other, and it's really tough to rank them or know how to feel about them moving forward. Now, 8 out of 10, I wish I had more good news on Ladd McConkey. I think that he's still a good player. I think better weeks are going to come, but moving forward, we have to take Quentin Johnson seriously, and I think it's honestly a slight to not be to make most of this about Ladd McConkey, where it's also just Quentin Johnston has been really good. And it stings because personally, I was all over Quentin Johnson as a prospect. I loved him as a first-round pick out of TCU on the Chargers, attached to Justin Herbert. Really fun prospect profile where he produced pretty much all 3 years, had rushing, dynamism. He was this huge physical specimen that had a high ADOT, but then a high yards after the catch, which is just a really rare blend, where if you were to chart yards after catch versus ADOT, it would be the shorter ADOT. Like, think through guys like Deebo Samuel, who had maybe like a 2-yard ADOT one year, but he gets the ball, and then all of a sudden he's gone for a first down. So, there is almost like a negative correlation, where the further downfield you catch the ball, the less yards after catch you're going to get. And it makes sense, right? Like, the green grass to run shrinks the further you get downfield, if that makes sense. So, Quentin Johnson was this rare breed where he could get the ball downfield, make people miss, have massive plays out of TCU, and then his rookie year went about as bad as it could ever go. Everybody got hurt. Mike Williams gets hurt. I think Keenan Allen gets hurt that year. It's literally only Quentin Johnson, and he can't go out there and perform, which, side note, it's why I don't care about opportunity for rookie wide receivers. Why I love Emeka Egbuka coming out of school is I don't care. Like, receivers get hurt, things happen. Wide receiver rooms are crowded until they aren't. So preferring somebody like Matthew Golden going into a wide open Green Bay Packers receiver room versus Egbuka, who's going into a receiver room with Godwin and Evans, I think is a really dumb idea in hindsight when we talk about dynasty. And I thought that at the time. I was vocal about that. Not that Golden was going ahead of Egbuka in most dynasty drafts, but it was something floated out there of, well, this guy's going to be the wide receiver 1 immediately with Jordan Love. It's not that simple. Jalen Reagor was the same thing on the Eagles. He was the only guy there when he was drafted, and he sucked. Justin Jefferson had to wait behind Adam Thielen for a few games, and he was amazing. Jamar Chase next to T. Higgins. I can go on and on and on about why competition in a wide receiver room doesn't work, or why it doesn't matter for young receivers. So Quentin Johnson gets thrust out there. He sucks. Drops were a big issue. He just seemed like completely out of his head. Last year, then, he kind of rebounds a little bit, and I wish I was in. I'm definitely someone that will pivot on my priors after I see year one, because as you guys know, I've showed those lists a ton with like Brian Thomas and Neighbors, and most of the time we know after just 1 year if a receiver, especially a rookie receiver, is actually going to be good long term. Most of these guys, they pop somewhere, whether it's like A.J. Brown, crazy yards per out run, or if it's just very simply your classic Odell Beckham, Puka Nacua, Michael Thomas, Mike Evans, Julio Jones, Brandon Ayuk, Jalen Waddle, 15-plus point per game scores. As a rookie, we genuinely can figure it out in year one, and sometimes we do get the late bloomers. Quentin Johnson, to me, reminds me some. I don't think that he's nearly as good or as polished, but Nico Collins was very similar to this. 2 bad years, and then he kind of popped off in his third year with the Texans. He had better excuses. He wasn't as bad. The expectations weren't as high, and those Texans quarterback rooms before Stroud came was awful, but I think now you just take it at face value that Quentin Johnson, the year 3 breakout is happening. He is a top 30 wide receiver rest of season moving forward. And he's been very, very good. So it's tough to take that away from him. He's doing exactly what he did in college, man. 13-yard ADOT, 25% target share, and he's converting on those, and he's averaging 19.9 points per game in a good offense attached to Justin Herbert. So you just have to kind of accept that for what it is moving forward for Quentin Johnston. Now, back to that was kind of a side tangent talking here, but now we can get back to the panic meter. And the next player we have on the panic meter is Brian Thomas. Not as panicked as Ladd. I have him at a 7 out of 10. Ladd is an 8 out of 10 here. Here's one of the bigger issues that's just like sort of outside of Brian Thomas's control is the Jaguars I thought would be pass happy with Liam Cohen, similar to what the Bucs were last year. But the Jaguars you can see are all the way down there. They're as run heavy as like the Bills are and the Raiders as the 25th highest neutral pass rate offense. They are just running the ball a ton. And you could see the Chargers all the way at the top as well. Just shows you what we're working with in terms of volume for those 3 receivers. It is much less with the Jaguars. So that's really tough. The silver lining for Brian Thomas is in a game where he gives you, like 50 yards on like 4 catches, something like that was his stat line. Not great. The silver lining is that this was, like Travis Hunter, his best game of the season in terms of yards per out run and PFF grade. He's maybe trending up, but there's also a chance that as we kind of like make these connections to pass receivers that I've seen in my time doing this in fantasy, it's starting to look, especially for him and Ladd, as these year 2 players that had a ton of expectations. Sometimes a year 2 player doesn't take a leap forward. Like, not everything is linear, not everything makes sense, and sometimes they do the Brandon Ayuk where they just take a step back, or they're put in a doghouse by their coaches, or even like Chase Claypool I've seen. Chase Claypool was really strong as a year 1 guy, Kelvin Benjamin too, and sometimes these guys just don't work out. Not for any rhyme or reason. I'm not saying that it's all over for Brian Thomas, but he is now somebody that you had super high hopes for. He hasn't turned it around yet. He hasn't looked amazing yet. And these are guys that I just have to just kind of capitulate with and put them in the wide receiver 20s for rest of season rankings. Then moving down the panic meter, I have Brock Bowers, who I have as a 6 out of 10. So I'm not that panicked. The issue with Brock Bowers, and it just really sucked, and I hate to just like use the injury excuse, but I think it really just is injury. Until his knee brace is off, I just don't think that he is going to be the guy that we drafted. It sucks because his usage is there. 91% of the routes last week, 87% of the routes this week with a 30% target share should be all Bowers needs to pop off in any given game. It just hasn't gone his way. Geno Smith was really bad in this game too with 117 passing yards. I think he's going to be fine long term. It just comes down to when that knee brace comes off. And with elite tight end being as bad as it's been, it's really hard to justify this capital you spent on Brock Bowers. You probably took him over Jonathan Taylor, over Josh Jacobs. Trying to think of who else you might have took him over. Definitely over, not that James Cook was going in the mid to late second, but over James Cook. You get what I'm saying. So I'm panicked, but like also I am still pretty firm in that once Brock Bowers is fully healthy, he will be fine as the tight end 1 overall because no one else is really emerging at tight end. Then we can talk about A.J. Brown. I have just below that at a 5 out of 10. The volume was there. He had 9 targets. Eagles had the 5th highest neutral pass rate in this game. They just couldn't find any efficiency late in this game. And they are trying to they're actually throwing the ball more than you think from a neutral pass rate perspective. Like they are not dead last. Like you would expect the Eagles to be dead last in neutral pass rate. They're above the Lions, they're above the Jets, they're above the Seahawks, they're above, that's it. I was going to say above one more team, but they're not dead last in pass rate, which I think is at least somewhat of a silver lining that they're not going to be this like historically low volume passing offense. They should be just a low volume passing offense like they were last year when A.J. Brown was top 12 in points per game and Devontae Smith was top 24. I think things are going to get back on track. I keep talking about this, and I just think even though we did just talk about like, okay, the first 4 weeks of the season are what they are, A.J. Brown has a 7-game career where he has never been below a 2.5 yards per out run. A.J. Brown being at 1.19 yards per out run through 4 games, I just would bet everything I own that doesn't stick. I think that he's going to end up at 2+ yards per out run. It's not going to be, I think it's going to be the lowest yards per out run of his career, but that would still be a top 10 number in most years. I think A.J. Brown will bounce back in a big way and start getting back into the top 12 conversation. And then Nico Collins. I can't believe that Nico Collins is someone people are really spooked on. The Texans won 26-0. That's a tough game script for any wide receiver to produce in. He was tied on the team for most targets. I think it's also a good sign that the Texans looked functional and they also found their rushing game. We'll talk about Woody Marks here in a little bit, but 129 rushing yards total on the ground for this team. I think it's just good that you saw C.J. Stroud find his rhythm a little bit, going 22 for 28, 233 passing yards, 2 touchdowns. It sucks that the touchdowns weren't for Nico, but 4 catches for 79 yards is like your floor game. I think is going to be absolutely fine for him, and better days are ahead. And unlike the Jaguars or unlike the Eagles, the Texans are 9th in neutral pass rate. So the volume should be there. I think this is a game that gets them back on track. I think big games for Nico are coming up here. He's only the wide receiver 20 in points per game. I think he's going to finish in the top 12 when it's all said and done. Now, I will say, circling back to the Brock Bowers conversation and also the 4-week conversation, my fourth takeaway is elite quarterback, greater than sign over elite tight end again. Trey McBride has been healthy the entire time, and here's kind of the litmus test for did elite tight end work. If I pull up the top 15 PPR point scores like I did here, and not one of them is a tight end, right? When we talk about flex only, so no quarterbacks, flex only. If none of them are a tight end, then drafting one in the top 3 rounds is probably a mistake. It's kind of what it boils down to. And it's tough to hear. I was drafting a lot of Brock Bowers. We just talked about Brock Bowers. I wasn't drafting as much McBride because I was just taking Josh Allen and Lamar over him most of the time, but it's tough. It's really tough. It's definitely starting to become an idea. I know Ryan Heath harped on it a ton. It was something that I said in my draft strategy videos was like, the numbers don't agree that elite tight ends work, but I think that there was a time and place where like McBride would make sense and where Bowers would make sense. Maybe they just need to be avoids moving forward. But we can see here, this is another good tweet from Hayden Winks, where fantasy points over replacement, you can see the quarterbacks, Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, both of those guys were drafted inside of the top 3 rounds. Jalen Hurts at the 10 spot was drafted inside of the top 4 rounds. Mahomes, not an elite quarterback, but adjacent. Then you have Dak and Goff, who are late round options. But at tight end, none of these guys were drafted highly. You have Jake Ferguson, Hunter Henry, Mark Andrews, Tucker Kraft. So none of them are, McBride, Bowers, or Kittle, which is an issue. Or even Laporta, right? Like, we're starting to get towards your round 7+ ADP for these tight ends. So I thought that was an interesting exercise of just seeing, like, who has been the most impactful quarterback and tight end and where were they drafted. Of course, all of the elite quarterbacks not named Jaden Daniels are on this list. None of the elite tight ends are on this list. So elite tight end looking rough once again. Now, after that, we will shift over to the rookie running back carousel. This is something new we've been doing. There is no sponsor, but I will say the sponsor is just the channel. Come on, fellas. Like, half of you guys are subscribed. If you enjoy the weekly breakdowns, leave a like on the video. Subscribe if you're new. There's so many of you guys that probably tune in every week. The algorithm just feeds you my videos, but then you're not subscribed. So go down there, check that you're subscribed, leave a like, subscribe if you're new, all of that good stuff. And then here's the rookie running back carousel. So how this works is we have rookie running backs that have X amount of touches. Their PFF grade. So how do they look on film? I'm still not in love with how this is just yet. We have their PFF grade. Then we have PPR per touch. So that is your per touch efficiency in terms of fantasy goodness. Points per game. How much are you producing in the box score? And then your last 3 week snap share to see just how much are you ascending in your backfield. And we saw for Marion Hampton, he has completely ascended. I have it sorted by snap share. Of course, Najee Harris tears his Achilles, but in this game, Marion Hampton looked amazing. He had 88% of the snaps, so now he is fully a bell cow on this team. And for somebody that was struggling with efficiency early on, he gives you 12 carries for 128 yards and a touchdown. He finally looked as advertised. He ripped off big runs for a big, like 225-plus pound dude. He was out there moving. He is a really good straight line mover if he can just get the runway. And then also 5 catches for 37 yards receiving. That is amazing. He's a top 12 running back rest of season. And I do want to say as well, kind of like what I alluded to with Travis Hunter in that talk there is like the rookies, it's time to panic on the rookies until it isn't, right? Just 2 weeks ago, I was getting killed in the comments for Ashton Genty, Marion Hampton, Travion Henderson, all across the board. Henderson hasn't been good, but it's crazy how just 2 weeks after that, we now have Hampton, Genty, Scatabo, Judkins. 4 of them are now top 24 running backs in points per game. They are all outproducing Derrick Henry in PPR points per game. And as we know, the rookie running backs only get stronger from here. So we're going to build some of these other guys, maybe Harvey, maybe Henderson are going to start to pop. And, maybe now Genty kind of takes his momentum and Hampton takes his momentum. And then all of a sudden we look back end of the season and like 3 or 4 of these guys finish in the top 12 for points per game. I think that isn't out of reach. Then we'll talk about Ashton Genty, though, speaking of him on this list. Really happy for him after what was like a really tough 3-week stretch. He looked so good, man. Like just like the tackle breaking that he showed in college and just staying up and the contact balance. He looked amazing. He had 21 carries, 144 yards, a touchdown, a receiving touchdown. And the really big thing for him is look at the snap shares. He goes from 57%, 60%, 85%. They are back to trusting him as an every down bell cow. A lot of the time they were taking off Dylan Laube in 2-minute drill or taking off Zamir White to go out there and passing down rolls and everything. Now they're just like, all right, we're done messing around. We trust Genty in pass protection. 80% plus of the snaps for Genty is massive. Scadabo wasn't amazing in a tough matchup versus the Chargers, but still 75% of the snaps, total bell cow. His usage was amazing. And then he's at 13.5 points per game on the year with an 83.7 PFF grade, leading all of these guys in PFF grade if that is something you care about. He had 25 carries in this game. Sadly, only 79 yards, 2 catches for 11 yards, but better days are ahead for him. Then we can also touch on Judkins, who was just a complete bell cow. In a game where the Browns got killed, he had 25 plus touches. He's at 16 points per game, tied with Amari and Hampton here. He's looking like a top 15 running back rest of season. That's kind of like game script proof. And he's, unlike some of the other running backs early on, is like winning on his own merit. Like he just looks good, explosive plays. He's finding the holes. Woody Marks is the big one to talk about here as just like a full takeover, dude. He comes out here last week, 49% of the snaps. This week, 58% of the snaps. He then gives you 17 carries, 69 yards, and a touchdown, 4 catches, 50 yards receiving. I think moving forward, this is his backfield, and he's a top 24 option in his own right. Rest of season has kind of like this. If there was going to be a Bucky Irving this year, it might be Woody Marks. Woody Marks looked good, and I'm almost mad at myself. I have some Woody Marks, right? I have him on some teams. I have him here and there, but almost hitting myself of like, it was so obvious looking back. We'll see how this plays out, right? But it was so obvious that if Mixon wasn't going to play this year and your options were Dameon Pierce, who we've already seen be bad, Nick Chubb, a veteran who is really banged up, and then just a rookie mystery box. Yes, no one really liked him as a prospect. No one really loved him here or there, but no one loved Bill, you know? No one, someone on Twitter loved Bill, but you get what I'm saying. Like, no one was excited about Bill when he went to Washington back in May. Same thing with Woody Marks, but the rookie mystery box is like almost always the correct answer. Sometimes is it Kamani Vidal. Sometimes is it, guys who are terrible, whether that's, I don't know. There's a whole list of whether it's Israel Abinaconda or Kalen Balaj or guys we wanted to be things that never actually panned out. And then sometimes it's Woody Marks, and he's like your last round pick. And I just wish I mixed them all in. I took some Chubb, I took some Dameon Pierce, I took some Woody Marks. I just wish I was like, dude, I'll go all in on the rookie mystery box because we were already pretty sure that Chubb is cooked and Dameon Pierce isn't good at football. So I don't know. I'm not trying to like beat myself up about it too hard, but I'm just saying sometimes it is that easy of, especially late in drafts, of just be like, all right, I'm just going to take the rookie because everything else kind of sucks here. We'll talk about Bill. Bill's in a really nasty split, and that's really his biggest issue. He is, as you can see, 80 plus PFF grade, one of the better PPR per touches. He is really efficient. He looks good on film. He's just not really trusted to be the full workhorse guy, and that sucks because he had 7 carries in this game for 47 yards, 6.7 yards per carry. It's his second game where, as a rookie in his first game versus the Giants, he had 10 carries for 82 yards, 8.2 yards per carry. He has been so efficient. He's been so good. And they're just stubborn. And that's really the biggest issue with these running backs is it's one thing to be stubborn in football, but even like an Andy Reid, Rashee Rice could get on the field, right? There's 3 or 4 receivers at a time, and it's just so much easier to get on the field. As a running back, you're completely at the will of your coach. And just kind of like segueing into Trevion Henderson, I wish I took more time to think about, maybe it was obvious that Sean Payton and Mike Vrabel would just be almost like prehistoric with their decisions of not wanting to now feature these backs that they drafted in the top 2 rounds of drafts, which in the modern NFL, that's big boy draft capital for running backs. You draft them there, they need to get on the field and produce, and they just don't seem very urgent to make that a thing. Now, of course, as we've kind of said here, when the Travis Hunter conversation, with the Hampton and Genty conversation, is the sky is falling until it isn't. I will say, anyone who's like victory lapping Trevion Henderson this week is kind of a clown. He got bailed out by a touchdown is really the truth of it. He still was out there for only 29% of the snaps. It's just not going to cut it. Him, Gibson, and Ramondre all got 5+ touches. It's a nasty backfield split, and you can, like, this was supposed to be a smash spot for Trevion. Like, could it be the breakout game where he takes over this backfield? It wasn't. I'll look at like his per touch stuff here just within this game. He had 7 carries for 4.5 yards per carry. Like, he looked good. They're just refusing. Like, I just can't believe that Antonio Gibson is in the mix. It'd be one thing if it was Ramondre Stevenson. Okay, you like this guy, you've extended him, but I don't know. Maybe we should have known better that the guy who sat Derrick Henry for Deion Lewis or whatever that story is, maybe was a dumb idea. I'm open to that. But I think Trevor Henderson will be okay. I don't know. If there was a panic meter here for the rookie running backs, for me, it'd be Trevion and RJ Harvey. Like, RJ Harvey's playing tonight, but those are the two that are looking like the biggest misses so far. Then we can talk about Brashard Smith trending up here. I'll kind of just bounce around the guys I think are important. Brashard Smith goes from 9%, 11% to 26% of the snaps. Didn't really do anything with those snaps, but just trending up and being on the field I think is a big deal. Yes, it was a blowout, but he was 100% in the mix before things got out of hand in that game. Tuen is still just a stash. He doesn't score a touchdown this week, so the box score doesn't look great, but PPR per touch, he's still leading all of these guys in. Caleb Williams, it's a W that Jalen Warren goes down, or not Caleb Williams, my bad. Caleb Johnson, it's a W that Warren goes down, and Caleb Johnson wasn't a healthy scratch, and he was out there playing, but still dead last in PFF grade, dead last in PPR per touch, 0.7 points per game. He played only 21% of the snaps. He had 6 carries for 22 yards, not even efficient on those. I don't know. Caleb Johnson's looking real tough right now. And then Trevor Etienne is worth mentioning as well, where this was just a blowout for the Panthers, so I think Trevor Etienne just got some playing time late, but he did look good. 7 carries for 33 yards will definitely always play. Now, kind of segueing away from the rookie running backs, we can just talk about messy backfields in general. We could talk about this Steelers backfield. Warren is hurt, and Kenneth Gainwell, which is also funny, and it kind of loops back around. I don't mean to get like super zoomed out in these, but I do love just kind of using these videos to just kind of give you guys my train of thought. I know maybe some of you guys want me to just do the cliff notes and go rapid fire, but Kenneth Gainwell is another one of these guys like Quentin Johnson. I love Kenneth Gainwell coming out of Memphis. He was really fun. He was part of that like I think it was Darrell Henderson, Tony Pollard, Antonio Gibson like stable that this Memphis team kept churning out of running backs, and Kenneth Gainwell was the next one, and he had like a 1,600-yard rushing season there. He was supposed to be really good and just never really panned out for the Eagles, but it is funny how these guys just like kind of come back around. I don't think there's going to be anything crazy. I think Gainwell is probably going to have a very similar career arc to Amir Abdullah of just like, you know, a guy who had hype coming out, and then like he didn't have as much hype as Abdullah, of course, but you get what I'm saying, and then like just kind of like sticks around in the fantasy world. I'd be hesitant to say that he's going to be like a real thorn in the side to Warren moving forward. I think it just kind of goes to show that this backfield, I wasn't expecting it. This backfield has a lot of fantasy potential. Gainwell gets 31 PPR points here. I just mean fantasy potential in terms of just like, not quite the Lions of like Montgomery Gibbs, but just like overall usage. This team uses the running backs. Gainwell had 19 carries, 6 catches, some goal line looks. He had 2 touchdowns. He did it all. He's not, I think that he probably hurts Caleb more than Warren, obviously. But they're not just going to go back. Like, Warren was trending up, and that's really the heartbreaking thing for Warren owners out there, is he was trending up, set season highs in usage and snap share in week 3 and looked amazing. Then he gets banged up, and now Gainwell looks good in his own right and is probably going to dip back into the touch distribution between the two. They're going to a bye, but coming out of the bye, we probably see more Caleb. We probably see a little more Gainwell than we saw in week 3. And now Warren gets squeezed a little bit after I just moved him up the rankings. This note I had for messy running backs or messy backfields is, who the fuck is Xavier Scott? Because I kept hearing that on Twitter, or like my little brother watching the game. Xavier Scott is a dude out of Maine, a converted wide receiver out of Maine, drafted in, or maybe he was undrafted, but 2023 class. Apparently he made some plays in the preseason, but he's important to note here because when Jordan Mason isn't in a leading game script where the Vikings are winning, Xavier Scott's going to eat into those routes, man. He had a 30% targets per out run, 18% target share, 43% of the routes to Jordan Mason's 37% of the routes, which is a big deal. He had 16.4 PPR points to Jordan Mason's 10.2. Jordan Mason is just a like floor-based RB2 unless if the Vikings are winning, or unless if like Jordan Mason scores a touchdown. But that's kind of true for all the RB2s, but you can just kind of add him to the heap of RB2 like I talked about earlier with the wide receivers, where you can just kind of have this heap of RB2s, or whether it's like Jalen Warren, Trey Benson, Jordan Mason, J.K. Dobbins, Travis Etienne, Chuba Hubbard, Kamara, Pollard, DeAndre Swift. Like, there's a billion of these guys in fantasy that aren't really separating themselves just yet. We can talk about the Kyron Corum split. I just have to take the time to show these whenever they come out, just because we weren't high on Kyron. He's like looking like a pretty rough fantasy pick right now as well. Kyron saw just 59% of the backfield carries today from Ryan Heath. That's his lowest in an active game since week 12 of 2023, when he got a 50% share in his first game back from injury. Aside from that, he hasn't been at sub 60% since week 1 of 2023, before Cam Akers was cut. So something to look at moving forward. I don't know that this is going to be a 60-40 split moving forward, but Quorum is a real thorn in his side in terms of volume. And what does he put up in this game, Kyron Williams? 10.4 PPR points. He's doing okay, but he's just an RB2, which is fine, but it's tough if people can start to match that as we kind of get the waivers rolling moving forward, whether that's like a Kenneth Gainwell or Trey Benson can get right, and that's kind of a great segue into the Seahawks Thursday night game versus the Cardinals. We have the Trey Benson usage, and this one really sucks. He was a buy candidate for me. So I did think that his usage from weeks 1 through 3 would carry over. You could see weeks 2 and 3, 55% of the routes, 60% of the routes. Weeks 2 and 3, 100% of the long down and distance snaps, 100% of the 2-minute drill snaps, and then 50% of the long down and distance snaps. That's all amazing usage in the passing game. This past week, though, 42% of the routes and only 7% of the long down and distance snaps. That is brutal. Now, I will say, when you see this screenshot, I've been showing this a lot in this video. This is from Fantasy Life. Dwayne McFarland's utilization report is a really, really cool tool for this. So it's not good, but I will say DeMarcado got a lucky touchdown, only 4 opportunities in this game. This is Trey Benson's backfield, and in more competitive game scripts, I don't think it's going to be as bad. But again, you can kind of just add him to the RB2 heap in fantasy football. And then we can also point out the Seahawks backfield split, where this was the Charbonnet coming off of injury game, 50-50 split. It was a 60-40 split towards Charbonnet in weeks 1 through 2. We'll see if it splits back towards Charbonnet, him getting healthy on a long week here. But it's tough to say moving forward. I think Walker's just going to be like a mid to low end RB2, and then Charbonnet will be like a high end to mid tier RB3 until we start to see more separation here. Walker had 21 opportunities, 110 total yards. He looked good and explosive, but he also had some really bad negative plays that I assume coaching staffs don't like. Charbonnet, more of your steady between the tackles chain mover. 14 opportunities for him, 44 total yards, and a touchdown. Advantage Walker in terms of efficiency, but he's really just a boom-bust RB2 archetype moving forward. And our last messy backfield here we'll talk about is the Saints, where it's not even really messy, but I just want to touch on it. Kendre Miller looks good. We have from Jacob Gibbs. Kendre Miller, in year 3, his snap rate has increased in every game so far. His 41% snap rate in the first half of week 4 was really impressive. He was on the field for 5 of 7 red zone plays and scored a touchdown. That's a big deal. And then Ian Hartitz here shows in terms of missed tackles forced per carry, yards after contact per carry, he is up and to the right, which is really exciting. He was a fun prospect out of TCU. He was just buried by Dennis Allen, who is just really the worst on the Saints, where he just like kept on coming at Kendre Miller for being banged up or whatever as a young player. But now Kendre Miller looks really strong. 11 carries, 65 yards, a touchdown, and he could really start to eat into Alvin Kamara's workload long term. Then we can talk about some long-awaited returns. We had Chris Godwin in his first game back. I'll take an L here. It's not going to matter for Egbuka. We kind of get bailed out on the Mike Evans injury, kind of almost like passing the baton here. I thought Chris Godwin was going to take forever to actually ramp up to a full route share and be a guy, but hats off to him, dude. Immediately full-time role for Godwin from Adam Levitan here. 81% of the snaps, 91% of the routes, 10 targets. He did only catch 3 of them for 26 yards, but 10 targets on 91% of the routes in his first game back means Godwin is all the way back to being a top 36 option the rest of the way. We can talk about another return here. We have Jordan Addison. No ramp up, no ease in, right out the gates. 96% of the routes, 20% of the targets. Had a long play that people were clowning him about, that like maybe not being on the field or with the team, that his conditioning was bad. I couldn't tell you what the case was, but he did make a big play. He looked good. I believe he had over 100 receiving yards in his first game back. Jordan Addison, you could add him to that big heap of flex-worthy wide receivers as well moving forward. Yeah, he had 8 targets, 4 catches, 114 yards in this game. Then we can talk about Isaiah Likely is now back as well. And that, sadly, I thought Andrews would be able to make this route share stick more, but he kind of got nuked here, going from 70% plus of the routes to 57% with Isaiah Likely back. Maybe I couldn't find any data that was like the route share after Lamar Jackson injury to see if that played into any of the usage here, but it's not a good sign to see his routes go down. But at least he had his highest target share, Mark Andrews, this week with Isaiah Likely back and healthy. Isaiah Likely didn't register a target, but I assume as he eases back, he will get more involved. I'm not sure Likely is a guy I'll ever be comfortable starting if Andrews is healthy, and then Andrews probably gets downgraded to like a high-end tight end 2, like almost like a streamer that you want to probably roster a backup option off of waivers. And then our final guy returning from injury, Xavier Worthy, dude. I was shocked by this. He comes out here, 71% of the routes, wide receiver 13 on the week without a touchdown, I believe, 2.77 yards per out run. That's all amazing. And then Ryan Heath shows here his last 7 full games, including the playoffs, 20% plus target share for all of them. He averages 20 plus points per game over that span, and he hasn't scored fewer than 17 PPR points in just one of those games. That is super impressive. He, as well, top 36 option moving forward. We'll see what happens when Rashee Rice comes back, but Worthy looks legitimately good. And this is kind of sucks because we were high on Worthy, and it makes you think, could this have been what Worthy was doing weeks 1 through 4, or weeks 1 through 3? Who knows? But we also have the Jaxson Dart debut. In his debut, once Malik Neighbors went down, we had 30% of the targets of Theo Johnson. I will say I investigated for you guys. He only had 63% of the routes. Theo Johnson's not worth picking up. I think Wandale is just going to be the guy moving forward. I'm not really interested in Darius Slayton. Scotabo, of course, is going to be an amazing running back for as long as Tyrone Tracy is out. I think the big storyline with Jaxson Dart is there wasn't a ton of receiving here. He had 111 passing yards and a passing touchdown, but the big thing here is for fantasy football, he had 7 designed rushes. That is by far the most on the week. So designed rushes are, of course, like zone read, QB sneak, all of that. He had like double the next guy. So if they're going to ride him like that and he's going to get an easy like 5 to 10 carries in every game, that is massive for his fantasy upside. It's always great to see a guy in his first start, where rookie quarterbacks in their first start can sometimes just like throw up all over themselves. The fact that he wins this game and gets 19.8 points in a game versus a really good Chargers defense is very impressive. We'll see if his passing game can get better. The issue is that he's throwing to Wandale Robinson, Theo Johnson, and Darius Slayton now that Malik Neighbors tore his ACL, which again, fuck MetLife. I cannot stand MetLife. I don't understand why that turf is still there. It has stripped so many like promising athletes of their prime. I hope that Malik Neighbors has a speedy recovery, but I also just can't really understand why one of the biggest sports markets in the world that has 2 owners. We have 2 owners. It's not even just one owner. It's 2 owners, and we still are cheaping out on this turf. But don't worry, we will have full grass for the World Cup. We will prioritize those athletes over our own. Now, that is my rant for today. We can also talk about 2 route shares passing in the night. We have Calvin Ridley here. He is just an absolute zero, man. If you wanted to drop Calvin Ridley in a shallow league, you can. He certainly can't go in your lineup at this point in time. He goes from 87% of the routes in week 3 to 43%, and that's just unstartable. He has been brutal. He has not passed 8 PPR points in a single game this year. Calvin Ridley is on your bench or on waivers until further notice. And then the route share passing in the night is Stephon Diggs, actually working back from this ACL injury. Goes from 70% of the routes in week 1, 58%, 55%, up to 82%. 80% plus is the number we have been looking for. He gets there. 41% target share, 13.1 PPR points, over 100 receiving yards. He looked in this game to be very good. It's a 1-game sample versus the Panthers, so don't go crazy about it, but he's now 100% back on the menu to be in your flex. And I will add, just as like a side tangent, that Drake May is the truth. He is the QB4 in fantasy points behind Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, Patrick Mahomes. That is super, super impressive, especially with this supporting cast of like a mid-offensive line, Josh McDaniels, Stephon Diggs, who's like now finally healthy, but like Kayshon Boutte and Mac Hollins, and just kind of like this band of misfit toys as his weapons here. And we can see in terms of some per-play efficiency metrics from AB, from @FantasyCosh on Twitter here, May is 4th in EPA per play, 7th in success rate, 5th in completion percentage over expectation. I'm super impressed with all of it, and I will say that this is going to segue into us the Falcons offense rebounding. Last week, they were in the bottom 5 for EPA per play. After this week, where they looked competent and good versus Washington, they're now back up to the top 20 in offensive efficiency. So that's a huge shift of expectations from me. If you tell me, okay, this is going to be a bottom 5 offense versus just like a bottom 15 offense, that's a huge gap of just like, this is a dumpster fire, or no, this is just going to be a fine offense for this season. It looks like they're trending more towards fine offense, which is a big deal. And on the back of that, we got Drake London back in business, 38.5% target share, 25 PPR points, a true bounce back after this AC joint that he had at the end of the game in week 1. Seems like Drake London is all the way back as a top 8 wide receiver rest of season, and I feel great about him moving forward. I feel great about Kyle Pitts, feel great about Bijan Robinson. This whole offense gets an upgrade. It was looking real bleak after the Panthers, getting shut out by the Panthers. This was a great way to respond for the Falcons. Now, that is going to do it for us today. Exactly an hour long top 10 takeaways video for week 4 as we look forward to week 5. I love these videos. All I ask is that you leave a like if you enjoyed, you subscribe if you're new, and I will see you guys in the next one.
Stones, like this froze, ice cold, ice around my body like I'm